Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network present the Discover Your Mission series.
Now, I had been brought up without any prayer, without Bible, without church, nothing of that kind. And so when my father died, I became suicidally depressed. I had no desire to live. And yet, by the grace of God, whenever I got to the point of actually taking my life, I always had this interior conviction that if I took my life, I would simply find it again on the other side, and it would be permanent misery.
But it wasn't until I became a wife and a mother, and I began to try and pass my faith on to my children, that I realized that everything I knew about Jesus was memorized doctrine.
I was a good man, I was a good father, I was instilling the sacraments into my family. But, I was definitely not intentional. I was stuck broke in my faith.
But what kind of strength did he have? Jackie did not just have a strength of body or baseball skill. He had a strength inside of his spirit, a courageous meekness that empowered him to play the game.
And I tell him what is going on with me, and he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, no, I think this is like some sort of miracle, dude. And he's like, okay, of course, but I'll believe it when I see it. Honey, you've been trying to quit, and you've been saying this and saying that, and I'm his big line to me is, you shouldn't say things, because I never follow through on them. And so this was week after week, month after month. He is looking at me like, this is a miracle. There is no way that you, on your own, could have done this.
So we are called to sing. All of us are called to sing. All of us are called to express ourselves and join our voice into the unity of the church. Often with my choirs, I ask them to listen to each other, to listen to the sound that they make together as one. That's what we're aiming for. Through the harmony or unison, we're aiming for a one sound.
You need to decide, what are you going to participate in? Are you going to participate in the historic Christian idea of the altar of sacrifice, which is in the Eucharist, or not?
Welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. This is a show all about implanting hope in our hearts. I'm Bill Snyder, joined by my friend Ann DeSantis. We're glad you're here for our uplifting conversation about faith and how it sustains our hearts through all the seasons of life. Thanks for walking with us. And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. I am Bill Snyder, and it is great to be with you here on yet another snowy Milwaukee day. We just got the snow total report, and they told us that it's another 11.9 inches. So here we are dealing with that yet again. It seems that every time I have the show, we have snow. But snow. But either way, we are here, and exciting to be here with you on this Mardi Gras episode as well. Today is Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, whatever you want to call it, Shrove Tuesday. It's just one of those days when we get to pig out in in anticipation of tomorrow. But Anne, how are you doing on this Mardi Gras?
Oh, I'm good. And I just finished eating a cookie and a brownie. So, yeah, I guess I did partake.
Good for you. Good for you. You know, it's probably that last brownie for the next 40 days, right?
That's right. I'm going to try with God's help. With God's help,
of course,
right?
Of course. And I know we have a great guest with us for our Mardi Gras party as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, we have an amazing guest. He's a returning guest too. His name is David Talarico. He is with Focus Ministries, and a lot of our viewers and listeners know what Focus is, but we're going to talk about that again and refresh everybody's memory about Focus. And not only that, he's a friend because he and my daughter Elaine, who's probably listening right now, were graduates from DeSales University in 2019. And so they were good friends, and it's just so wonderful to have him here. David, thank you for joining us on Sowing Hope.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you, Bill. I'm really excited to be back.
Yeah, we're excited to have you back. So how have you been doing? And I know the last time you came on, I believe it was in the summer. So it was like kind of during that time where we were all on hiatus, I guess, right? Because it was in the middle of the pandemic when everybody was home. And I believe the churches weren't even really opened at that time in the middle of last summer. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a whirlwind of a year to be back on campus, but yeah, many fruits and many great stories to be able to share. So I'm excited to be able to pass that on to our listeners.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Now, David, I wish, or I would wonder if you could share with people who are listening and thinking, what is Focus? Because even though a lot of people know what it is, I do think a lot of Catholics understand what that is. But please do tell us about Focus and how you got involved.
Yeah, sure. Focus stands for the Fellowship of Catholic University Students, and it's a postulate that's made up of recent college graduates mostly. And we are assigned usually to work on college campuses, and we're able to encounter the college students there, to be able to bring them into a relationship with Jesus Christ and his church, hopefully to build them up in the faith so that they can be able to live lives centered around Christ and his teachings and his church, and ultimately to be able to send them out so they can be able to go and live out their faith both on the college campus and even after. So I've been working with Focus for the past 2 years now. This is my second year, and I'm at Towson University in Baltimore, and it's been such a pleasure to be able to work with the organization.
Yeah, I love Focus, and I know other people who are involved in it and have interviewed even another gentleman by the name of James Hare. I don't know if you know James, but he was also a guest on the St. Raymond Anonymous Foundation podcast a couple years ago. But Focus is just a wonderful organization that does so much outreach because, it's all about evangelizing, and it's all about teaching young people the value of the Catholic faith, the value of the sacraments of the church, the value of vocation, right? I mean, I'm sure you do a lot of that, just teaching people the value of understanding that we're on a mission, right? Every single one of us is on a mission.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely want to be able to just share the good news of the gospel with the college students that we encounter, and to be able to show them that their faith is relevant, that it is the most important thing in their life, that it's ultimately that needs to be the center of every decision that they make, which is where you get into vocation, and just the day-to-day of how they live, how they pursue virtue, their relationships their relationships with their friends and family, and just how they orient their tasks throughout the day and get involved in the church.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's amazing work because I know when you graduated, now you're a pretty recent graduate of 2019 from DeSales University in Center Valley, PA. It's a wonderful university. We have great friends there. You had a decision to make. Tell us about that for people who didn't get to listen to that first podcast that you did with us.
Yeah, when I was graduating from DeSales University, or I guess I'll go back a little bit, my senior year. So my senior year of college, coming into it, I had been from my freshman year of college really set on going into medical school. I had taken all of the prerequisite classes. I had taken my MCATs. I had applied to medical schools. I had always been set that was the way that was where God was calling me to be able to serve him. But throughout college, through the education that I got at DeSales University, through the many relationships, especially through the campus ministry there, and ultimately through my exposure with Focus and some of their conferences and missionaries, I really came to be able to enter into my faith and enter into a deep personal relationship with Christ, and desiring to enter into life with him in the prayer, life in the sacraments, in fellowship, learning more about my faith. And ultimately, it was through that I slowly started to view my life very differently, started to orient my life more towards Christ, and where I eventually became open to the idea of considering being a missionary after college. That was around the summer before my senior year of college and most of my fall semester. I just kind of had this inclination of, well, as I'm going through life, I need to be able to have a backup, was what I thought. I needed to be able to have my plans of medical school, but this is just in case something doesn't work out. But just going more and more through the interview process with Focus, learning more about it, leading Bible studies, walking with students in mentorship on campus, my heart just continued to be transformed. And ultimately, I just realized that, dang, this is not the plan that God wants me to have as a backup. That medical school was something amazing that I had at the time, but it was not originally the plan that God wanted me to pursue first. And I ended up actually accepting an offer from Focus to be a missionary. And by the grace of God, through a long process, my spring semester, I was able to get a deferral to Drexel University College of Medicine, where I'll actually be able to be entering next year. So I was able to do my 2 years with Focus. And it's been such a transformative experience. I know that it's going to define so much of how I desire to practice medicine and just live my life in general. And the impact that I've been able to see, that the Holy Spirit has been able to use me as an instrument here at Towson. I wouldn't change any of it for the world. It's definitely been a transformative experience.
That's beautiful. That, your journey, is really one of just awesome trusting in the Lord, and trusting that he, and that his plan is the best plan for your life. That's what I love about your story. And I love that you share that with us, because I think there's a lot of people out there that have a difficult time just trusting God. I think we have talk about a pandemic. We have a pandemic of trusting God in our society.
Yeah, we absolutely do. We do. And if I could interject for just a second, is that I have to say that when I hear about you and the fact that you will be a young man who will be entering into medical school and who decided to do something like Focus, how blessed is our society that somebody like you is going to be a doctor? Exactly. How blessed are we that a trustworthy, and I underline that word, trustworthy person who loves God and cares about human beings and who has a moral compass, right? Because some people, let's face it, in the medical world, not everybody does. And so it's going to be a blessing for the whole world. And I'm so glad I'm part of it. So thank you for that, the wonderful decisions that you have made. So now you're going to be with Focus until the end of this school year. Is that what's going on?
Correct. So my term with Focus will end after the end of the semester. So sometime around May or June is when I'll be transitioning out. In a sense, I'm kind of a senior on campus along with many of the other students. So I'm kind of making sure to really, allow myself to be able to give myself to this ministry, because ultimately I'm not in med school yet. I have to make sure that I am a full-time missionary until the day that I walk off campus. And I don't want to let up or do any, miss this time that God has given me. Can be a temptation to get, my chaplain and I were talking about it, senioritis can happen even in any vocation. I don't want to waste this time. I want to be able to use it to be able to set up the next missionary who's going to come in here and is going to fill my spot, and really to prepare those students who are going to be moving on and continuing this legacy here at Towson. So all for God's glory. I want to be able to just really be able to continue to put forth my best effort.
That's awesome. That's so good. It's so good to hear, that singular focus, no pun intended, right? To really do exactly what God is calling you to do in this moment. And, that's another huge lesson, right? Just trying to choose each moment, but I'm wondering, if you can also talk with us a little bit back, because I know there's been so much going on. We were talking just a few minutes before the program started about, that it's a really busy time for you and for Focus right now. And so I would love it for you just to kind of fill people in. I know There were a lot of things happening with Seek 2021, which was very cool, that just kind of wrapped up. So maybe share with us a little bit of what's going on, and of course what's going on in your direct ministry at Townsend as well.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a busy semester, to say the least. Definitely don't even really have time to kind of ease up in a sense, just because coming into this semester, usually in the past, Focus has these big conferences. They're usually Seek or SLS. Now they're always Seek conferences. And our Seek conferences are really just opportunities for students to be able to gather, to be able to come together and encounter Christ, encounter their faith, and experience real friendship, to be able to really unite as a body of Christ in his church, hearing from dynamic speakers, inspiring small group discussions, and especially witnessing Christ in the sacraments. So we're just coming off of our big conference this year. It was Seek 21. Usually they're held over Christmas break, but this year, with it being virtual, it was just last 2 weeks ago, I guess, about 2 weekends ago. And we were able to gather here at Towson around 20 students in person, as well as some attending virtually. But really, the conference had such a huge impact, and it was such an amazing thing to be a part of, because we had over 27,000 people registered for the conference, including 11,000 students. So it's just mind-boggling to be able to see the effects in the midst of this pandemic still.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, Seek is wonderful. And I was enlightened about Seek through Elaine, your friend, my daughter. And this was years back. And then you were so wonderful to invite me to be a part of it this year. And I got a wonderful little box in the mail from Seek, which had all kinds of things to give out to friends, little journals and cups and pens and different things to be able to watch the Seek conference and really partake. And so I just want to thank you, and I want to thank Focus for that, for including me and people that I know. Now, I don't know if you know this, David, but Elaine is now a teacher. Did you know that?
I thought I saw something on social media that she had changed over. That's great.
Yeah. Now, the neat thing is that she was able to share a lot of what you sent me, a lot of what Focus sent me with her students at Cardinal O'Hara High School in Philadelphia, because she's teaching theology.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, it's an amazing thing. And being able to share it with high school students, being able to share the Seek conference and the great things that Focus is doing with people in that age bracket. So we do have to keep praying, right? I mean, because I think there is still a pretty large group of younger people throughout the country and the world that are still being challenged with not being a part of their faith, with not really engaging in their faith. So what has that been like for you? Because I know that it's a challenge, but it's also a good challenge to live your faith. You're giving yourself for 2 years, right? 2 years of your time for God. And you're doing this for the sake of these other people, that they would come to know Christ in a deeper way and the gospel. So tell us more about what that has been like for you, because I know you probably had ups and downs in that journey.
Absolutely. It is one of the most rewarding and one of the most challenging experiences I think I've had. I think being a missionary has stretched me so much. And only by the grace of God am I able to come out the other side and say that I've grown and I've learned that there has been fruit from it all. I think coming into it, college is really the time when young people are really discovering who they are and what's important to them. It's where they discern their values, discern what's important to their life. They're picking out their career. They're looking for maybe spouses, or if they're open to it, religious vocations, other type of callings. They're trying to, make good friendships, be able to find out, what really matters in life. And really, it's that time that we really target as Focus missionaries, because we want to be able to impact this generation, that we know that this is a generation that is free from kind of the high school setting that you said. High school, it's great that they're participating in Seek, but it's this is the first time that people are on their own oftentimes. And I think especially in these days with COVID, it's a time that can be very isolating and feeling kind of alone. We had last fall semester, we actually had most of our students, only 20% of students were able to have in-person classes, and there was no students that were allowed to live on campus. We had around a couple hundred that lived in the area that we were able to access. But really, I think in the absence of those relationships and absence of that, it really can just leave a void for these students, a void that they're going to fill with whatever they kind of come in contact with, whatever they're familiar with. And if they don't have a faith, it could be alcohol, it could be parties, it could be hooking up, it could be any sort of thing. It could just be working, doing excessive classwork, doing video games. That ultimately, these students are just kind of looking for something. They're desiring something. And ultimately, that's what the idea of the Seek Conference is that we're encountering Christ. We want them to be able to, everyone's seeking for something. And ultimately, everyone is seeking for God. They just, what is their God that they're kind of filling that void with? When really the only thing that's going to fill it is Jesus Christ. But so many people are filling it with other things. So it's really just such a gift to be able to work on the college campus, because it's something that is just naturally in the people, in the students that I work with. It's not something that I have to kind of like evoke. Everyone's trying to find something. Everyone wants to find meaning in their life. They want to find goodness. They want to find truth. And most of them just don't know that that's a person. That's a relationship with Jesus Christ. So it's such a gift to be able to walk with them. And obviously it has so many challenges because the culture teaches so much of like, you need to have a lot of money to be, you need to have success, you need to have prestige, honor, you need to have just pleasure, whatever it might be. So it's really just being able to walk with them. That ultimately my goal is just to be able to walk alongside these students. And it has its ups and downs. Sometimes the students are really excited about their faith, and other times there's so many different things that can get in the way, so many different distractions. And I just need to be able to be patient and trust in God's timing. I'm just sowing the seed, and however it lands, I just need to be able to trust in the fruit that does bear from it.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. And I know you're doing a great job because, I know you because I know you from my daughter Elaine and the experiences that you guys had at DeSales University, which were wonderful. David, I thank you so much for your friendship with her, because her experience was that she was homeschooled from pre-kindergarten all the way to grade 12. And I have to say, for Elaine had faith from the time she was about a year or two old. And so she was in that like rare bunch of people in college that literally like she had stuck with her faith through high school all the way through. And so when she met you and when she met groups of friends at college like yourself from the DeSales University ministry department, that I don't know whether that's still in existence anymore at this point. I know that they kind of, closed things down in some ways because of COVID and different things. But because of their ministry, she was able to make wonderful friends like you and stay even closer to her faith throughout college. And of course, I have that memory of the honors. I don't know what that was called, David. You're going to tell me, but whatever that meeting was where you and Elaine were selected with a group of about 10 other kids to be a part of the honors program at DeSales, where you all had to give a talk about your experience of faith, and you wrote a wonderful paper. So that was a way that I got to know you a little bit, is when you won, everyone was kind of like, they had sort of like not a winner, but I guess in some ways, right? They did have to judge the papers, and David won first prize for his participation in that. And David, it was wonderful. Really did a great job. And I thank you for sharing your faith with all of us on that evening that I was there to listen to your story. I just wondered if you had a faith story to share. Was there a moment in your life that you felt like God came closer when you were either a young adult or high school, whatever it was? I wondered if you wanted to share that with us. It'd be great to hear. Yeah.
I think, it's such beautiful to be able to hear about Elaine's story where she had that like solid faith. And I have so many other friends. One of my teammates here, she always has said that like she believes that faith is like her charism. Like she's never had any doubt in God and his love and his mercy in their life. And I think so many, that's such a great gift. But so many, that's not the case. And I think for myself, it wasn't that I ever had like this moment where I declared that God never existed and he doesn't care about me. But I think we can go through life living like we might declare. It's a concept I like to say, that it's like we can declare that God is like, that he loves us, that he's always there, he's always present. But we don't always live out of that identity. We can always claim it, but it's not always something that we embrace. It's something that's it's in our heads, but it's not always in our hearts. Yeah. And I think a lot of my life, that's how I kind of live. I was living my life that, I knew who God was. I had grown up in a Catholic family. I had grown up, going to catechism classes like CCD. I received all my sacraments. I would go to Mass with my family, and it was all great blessings. But I didn't have a personal relationship with God, and I didn't really exactly understand. And just wrestling with God in so many different ways, wrestling in my identity, wrestling with my sins, just not exactly sure of who he was, not exactly sure of like, who is this God? Because I think so many of us, we view God as, we hear about that he is love, but we don't understand how someone can love us in our brokenness. And I think that was something for me, is that there were so many different parts of my story, so many areas of my life, the different sins I struggle with, different ideas that I had to be perfect, that I had to achieve something, earn God's love, things I was looking for just in my academics or in many different ways. And ultimately going through college, just coming to understand who God was and having to wrestle with that this wasn't the image that I lived out of, that this was the God who, like, he loved me, but I always put qualifiers on that. I always put, he loves me when I'm doing well. He loves me when I'm going to church, but he doesn't love me when I'm making mistakes. He doesn't love me when I'm living out of a broken identity. And ultimately, it was really for me at a Focus conference, SLS in 2018, where I really remember just listening to all the talks, being convicted of Jesus's love, and just, feeling a lot of shame, a lot of brokenness. And just remember going to adoration that night, or going to confession that night in the middle of the conference, and bringing to the priest everything that was weighing on my heart, everything that was, all this sin and this brokenness, and just kind of laying it before the priest. And he was just kind of asking, but he's asking just genuinely, because I think there's some confessions where I've gone and laid it out and it's just forgiven. But we actually had a discussion about it, and he was just like, what bothers you the most? And I was just like, I fear that if somebody knew about who I am, about what I struggle with, about my sins, that ultimately I wouldn't be able to be loved. And that's the same kind of thing that I put on God. And I remember the priest looking at me, and for penance, he just told me to go back out to Eucharistic adoration, to where Jesus is present in the Eucharist, and just receive it. That ultimately it's not anything that I can do to earn it, but that it's something that it needs to be just received. And it was something that I ended up just going back to adoration. And as is the story, and we got to see it so many times at Seek this year, actually, which is always amazing, is that I just broke down. Like it just opened my heart to the grace and the love that he sees me, that his gaze is always upon me, and that he loves me even in the places that I don't yet love, in the places that I'm ashamed of, that I am broken, that's where he wants to really meet me. And I think sometimes we think that we have to come to God already having everything figured out. But it was the realization that he wants to come to me in my brokenness, because he cares about it and he wants to transform it. That it's ultimately that experience of God loves me right where I am, but he loves me too much for me to stay there. He wants me to be even better than where I am now, but he doesn't stop him from loving me where I am. And that's just been what kind of drove me. And it's continuing to always be the driving factor. Every time that I fall into a rut in my life, I feel like since then, and I make it sound like it's been long ago, it's like 3 years. So it's still very new, and it's still a very recurring process. It's just every time I fall into a rut, it's just losing my identity, forgetting that I'm already loved and trying to earn it. And then every time that I can remind myself and just receive it again, he deepens my love for him. We were talking about it as a team today, is that like God's love is infinite. So it's just such a beautiful thing that I can continue to keep going deeper and deeper. It's not something that like I had an experience and now I'm done, I've hit the top. I can always go deeper, and he's so generous with being able to do that, and has continued to do that on mission, and I know will continue throughout my life.
Yeah, that's, it's so awesome, David. And my favorite thing that you really highlight in there is that it really is a great message for us on the eve of Ash Wednesday, to really understand that God loves you no matter what, and the best thing is that he's calling you to greatness. I just love that. I just love how he, you really articulated that. And it's a message that our listeners need to hear, because, here we are getting ready to enter into, 40 days or, a Lenten season that is, going to be a time of that personal introspection, that time of looking at ourselves, growth in faith. And so I think if we can remember that, we are not too broken to be loved by God, that is just a great way to approach Lent as we continue to grow in our faith.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bill, and David as well. And, for me, as a person who's over the age of 50, it's just encouraging. I'm looking on the screen at David and Bill and thinking, I'm looking also down at my phone and seeing that we have about 8 people or so or more listening live. And it's just so encouraging to see younger people who really care about their faith. And going back a little bit, as I said, when my daughter met you and people like you at college, me being the homeschooling mother for 15 years, right, had a concern because my primary reason for homeschooling was the faith, right? I wanted to make sure that my daughter who was going to school for theology, that she was going to be there with like-minded friends who cared something about their faith. And so I'm grateful to you, and I'm grateful to the people that she met during that time. And that's what Focus is, right? I mean, Focus is really the same kind of thing, that it's bringing together people who are really living their faith, loving their faith, and also demonstrating. Is that a good word? Demonstrating their faith. It's not just saying, okay, yeah, I go to church on Sundays. That's wonderful. But do you care in between the 2 Sundays that what you did in between? Or think about God, in between the week there. So it's just a wonderful thing for people like me who are more the parents, right? The people who are older and thinking, wow, it's great to see that they made good decisions for their faith. Because, we got to carry on the faith, don't we? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's going to come a point where it's going to be handed over to people, younger people, to bring it to those younger people, the kids, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. They need to keep living it out. And that reminds me, Bill's going to be a parent. So, Bill, now you know what I'm talking about, too, because the baby's going to be born in just a few months.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a handing on of the faith. In fact, quick aside, I won't give the date here publicly, but it was very cool. Both my wife and I, just thinking and praying and talking about it, even before, of course, my son is alive, Elvin is alive. But it was, already, in this world. But one of the cool things that we did was we set the baptism date. Like I went over to the church, talked with the pastor and said, we know when he's going to be born. We know this is something that we want relatively early in, his life, and set the baptism date. Like, when you go into talking about the faith, like, okay, I mean, it's funny, you can make all the first-time parent jokes, I'm sure, but the reality is that, we're talking to the belly, reading stories to the belly. Elvin is alive. Like my son is alive, and he is, a real human being, and his location in this world doesn't make him any less of a person. He happens to reside in a womb right now, but that's regardless of where you are, it doesn't make you any less of a person. And so, as he's developing, he can hear, he can see. Now his eyes are now open, and beginning to focus. Like, we watch these little videos, each and every week of the pregnancy. My wife and I, we watch these little videos each and every week, and they're like 3 minutes long, and they tell us, your baby is doing this now, your baby is doing that now, and it's so cool to learn about, man, the human, God's design and the way He designs us and knits us together in a womb is just unbelievable. So, I think when we are talking about passing on the faith, when you encounter that as a person, you're like, man, I just want to pass this on. I want to hand it on. And so, but at the same time, David, I think where you're talking about, we all have those, watershed moments where we have to choose, we have to choose Christ for ourselves. Our parents can't do it. Our parents can hand on, they can plant the seeds, and that's another big word you've used a lot is planting those seeds and hoping they'll grow in the future, and that's a wonderful thing. But the reality is that each person is going to have watershed moments throughout their life that's going to say, I need to choose God, or I choose not to choose Him. And in those moments, if we have the foundation, if we have the base that is within us, then it makes it a lot easier to say, I already know the truth. I'm going to follow this. And so I just think, the work that you're doing to help, young people in a time when there's a lot of questions in their lives, you mentioned them, right? There's a lot of questions in their lives. To just understand and know, okay, you know what? No matter how broken I am in these moments, I'm loved and I'm being called to something greater. I'm being called to something greater. I'm being called to a greater perfection. As Christ says, right? He says, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, and that's the bar. That's the bar, right?
It's a high bar.
It's a high bar. Well, no, I sure don't think I'll ever get there this side of heaven, but but the idea is that we're striving for that, and so so you continually calling people to that and awakening their hearts and minds to that is so important, and so. Thank you for all the work you're doing. It's just great to hear.
Yeah, thank you so much, and congratulations, Bill. I didn't know you were expecting that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, early May.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, God's original plan was that spiritual fatherhood and biological fatherhood were all supposed to be the same. If everything would have went perfect, we wouldn't need anything besides families to evangelize.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
it is
right.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told Bill recently that I'm pretty excited for him too, and for Agnes. And I don't know any other babies coming this year right now, and so it's very exciting for me. Bill knows that. I can't wait for Agnes and Bill to have the baby, for Elvin to come into this world. So, but going back to you, as Bill, you said so well that David is really. He's living out God's will. I mean, and me personally, the fact that I know David and he's a friend of my daughter's, and you helped to make my daughter's college experience good too. When you know that your child is going off to a school where they have friends that are celebrating their faith, and their faith means something to them. So you decided to take what you experienced in college and to take that forward. Not to say that, life isn't perfect. I'm sure that there weren't always perfect moments throughout college, right? But the point is that you kept your faith enough that you wanted to go into focus and do what you're doing now. So I wondered if you could share with us, what is it like for you when you get to really evangelize people? Because even though we've been through COVID this past year, I'm sure that there's some lives that you personally are touching and helping to draw them into their faith through the Holy Spirit and through the grace of God.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Holy Spirit, I was talking to Bill a little bit before this, is that Jesus is not limited by the bounds of like what COVID has put in. He's not bound by the restrictions of masks and the fact that we're 6 feet apart, or we can only gather in Baltimore County, we can only gather in groups of 10 unless it's a church service, a mass, or a prayer service. But Jesus is not restricted to that. And I love always telling stories because I think they really just speak volumes to how God works. And I know there's been one student who's he's going to be in my upcoming newsletter. He sent me his story, so I just would love to share. His name's Jeremy. And I think he's just a powerful witness to like how God is working even in these challenging times. So Jeremy this year is a sophomore on campus. But we met him last year tabling on campus. We were just out trying to be able to meet people during fall outreach. He kind of was just walking by. I just caught his attention. We just started talking a little bit, and we invited him to be able to just come join us at one of our Newman nights. It's basically a hangout that we do at our Newman Center. And he came, and it brings in so many different ideas of what we were talking about, kind of how Bill was saying about like identifying that like his child, even in the womb, is still a person. And I think Jeremy, when he was writing about his experience, he said that when he came to our Newman Center, he just felt welcomed and he felt that he was being treated like a person. He was being, which almost seems like something that should be obvious. That should be how it is. But I think sometimes, especially with COVID right now, some people just feel like they're just being treated as like a threat almost, in a sense, maybe, that it's like, this person's getting a little too close to me. They might be dangerous. And obviously I want to take proper precautions and all those things. But it almost makes people feel like they're just isolated and distant. They don't feel like a person anymore. But Jeremy was really able to get that in our experience. But he was agnostic at the time. He had grown up in a Baptist household, but his family wasn't super practicing, and he had rejected Christianity just kind of as silly, non-intellectual. But he kept coming back to the Newman Center. He really felt like he was able to maintain those friendships there. And he was starting to come to my Bible study regularly. And he's a very intellectual guy. He loves to be able to learn about the faith. And I still remember one day he just told me, like, he'd been watching Bishop Barron videos, reading St. John Henry Newman and St. Thomas Aquinas. And I remember picking him up and we were going out to eat or something. He's just like, Dave, I realized today, he just casually looks over at me and he just goes, I realized today that Jesus is God and that I want him to be at the center of my life. And he just says it casually and then just goes back. And I'm just like, wait a minute, slow down. What did you just say? And we continued to have more discussions about what that means. He started opening it up to prayer and reading the Bible, and in perseverance and just having debates with different people. And it was a long year and stuff. And then in the midst of COVID, he was still actively involved. But ultimately it comes down to, I think Anne was saying, making a decision. I forget, one of you were saying, making a decision. That we come to those moments where we have to make decisions. And ultimately it was this past December past November, Jeremy decided, I've been involved in this enough. I understand intellectually Jesus' presence in the Eucharist. I understand the importance of the sacraments and the teachings of the church. And he just made the decision to be confirmed into the church. So after he had received his baptism, his confirmation, all in the same day, in the midst of COVID. So December 6th this past year, which he was confirmed in the church. It was an honor to be one of his sponsors. He had 2 sponsors. And he's one of 3 students that have been confirmed since my 2 years in Focus. And now he's been growing so much because he is such an intellectual person, and he's just been growing. He always says, in humility has been one of the biggest things. Just realizing how much other people can teach him, how much he has to know, how much he has to grow in his relationship with Christ. And I think it comes back to, like you were saying, Anne, just the foundation for friendship. So he's moved into an apartment with 3 other guys from our Newman Center. One of them is going to be graduating. Another one's going to be becoming a Focus missionary next year. Mm-hmm. So it's really just that community of guys. They just build off each other. It's just, we call it in Focus, we use the hot coals analogy. If you have a charcoal fire and you light a bunch of coals, but they're pretty spaced out, they'll burn maybe a little bit. But as soon as you put them up together in a pile, they really start to burn. They really start to give off flames and give off heat. And then you can even ignite other coals that just come close. It's really just, practicing their faith. And it's been so cool to be able to walk with Jeremy. And he wants to take on leadership next year in our Newman Center. We're going on a mission trip, and he's coming with us for that in a month, doing mission trip work in Nebraska, which I can talk about more later. But and he's just practicing his faith. He's pumped about Lent. They got a big group of guys doing the same Lenten practices and meeting together and going to Mass together. So it's just, his biggest thing was just if you're just curious and you're brave, he said that this is what he told me to tell. He said, if you're just brave and you're curious enough, take the steps to go out in the faith. And I think it's so cool because it's someone that didn't have that upbringing, but God is still able to work. And it's so cool to be able to see, even in the midst of COVID, that he's growing so much. And we've found that experience for so many students that, we might not be able to reach as many souls, but we're really able to enter deeply into the souls that we're reaching. And then next year, supposedly, Towson is going to be fully in person. And I can't wait to be able to hear about the work that some of these students we've been investigating and how they grow. So, it's just, I love the stories of a changed life. I think it just speaks wonders to God's power.
I have a feeling that you will be keeping some of these relationships after Focus is over, because these are valuable years for you, and God is using you in great ways. Thank you so much for sharing about his journey, and I wish him all the best. And I think that he's going to have a wonderful remainder of his college years. Mm-hmm. And we would love to now hear about Nebraska. You mentioned that, so let's hear.
Absolutely. I was talking a little bit with Bill, but we didn't talk too much about it, is that this year with Focus, we're not able to do international mission trips like we used to. at least not in the fall, in the spring semester. So we're actually going to be leaving in one of the early weeks of March. We're going to be going to Omaha, Nebraska. And we're really excited. It's a Towson-only trip. So 2 of my teammates and I, as well as our chaplain and 6 students, are going to be going to Omaha, Nebraska. And we're going to be able to serve there with the Winnebago and the Omaha Native Americans. So St. Catherine Drexel, this is where she went and did some mission work, and she founded a school there. So we're going to be serving at the school with those Native American children and some of the elderly as well. And it's just going to be for the week. These students are giving up their spring break to go out and be able to serve. They fundraise to be able to go. So it's just such a sacrifice for them, but it's such a beautiful testament to their faith and how they want to grow. And we're going to be participating in daily mass, daily holy hour, praying together, going through formation, and just really entering into each other's lives. So I know mission trips, and yeah, Focus has a big missions department. It's just one of our biggest departments here at Focus. It's a third of the size of the Peace Corps. Actually, it's it's the largest Catholic missions organization in the world. So it's just so powerful to be able to be a part of that. And I think in such a time as COVID, there's even more of a need because there's so fewer people out to go serve, and there's so fewer people, willing to take that risk. And there's so much more of a need in the midst of all the challenges economically that COVID causes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's great work. Doing the mission work is so important. And, honestly, we talk a lot about international missions too, but, there's such a mission field right here. I can drive, 10 minutes and there's a mission field. Not even. I can drive probably 5 feet and there's a mission field.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thanks for doing that great work too, and that's awesome. Being able to get out to Nebraska and do some great mission work.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited for you. Now, when is that going to be again?
It's going to be over their spring break, so I think it's the second full week of March. So yeah, prayers for that would be amazing.
Of course.
We're really excited for that. So.
Yeah. Now, people are listening who are learning about Focus, and I know that there's always fundraising going on. I would love it if you could tell people how they can help out, help you out, help Focus out. How can they give and how can they pray for you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Our Focus mission, we have around about 800 missionaries, a little over 800 missionaries serving throughout the world, but we have thousands of supporters that are supporting us behind each missionary. So each missionary is supported. They fundraise their full salary to be able to serve in the location that they're designated to pay for things such as housing, but also things like ministry expenses, conferences, giving scholarships to students. So these students fundraise a monthly salary. I'm on my way out in some way in Focus, so I don't want to particularly take up new sponsors, but Focus is always looking for donations. So if you just go to focus.org and search missionaries, you can find ones at maybe an alma mater. You can find ones support a university as a whole. So if you wanted to support like the missionary team at Towson University, you can support a team as a whole. Or just want to support Focus Focus nationally, as well as Focus any of their programs, their conferences, the missions department. So there's plenty of areas and so much need. And also, we don't want it to just be like financially, but we believe that where your treasure lies, so too your heart lies. It says in Scripture that if people are investing their treasure with Focus, and I'm completely behind the work that we do. And I think that it really does merit so much to be able to do so. And especially even if you can't donate, I know it's hard times economically for many people. It's just a great opportunity to be able to pray for Focus missionaries. Look up, pray for my team here at Towson. Pray for myself in my ministry as I finish off. Pray for Focus nationally, or find maybe missionaries near you that you want to be able to support. Because there's plenty of us around the country and even some internationally now. So yeah, continue to look into Focus and continue to support, go to conferences are open to people, just as Anne said she was able to attend. So there's plenty of opportunities to get involved in the mission of Focus wherever you're at.
Awesome stuff, David. Thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing, your story and knowing that you're going to be carrying all of this experience, as Anne said at the beginning of the program, into, your future vocation. As a doctor, and to go into medical school and pursue that. Man, we are so blessed to have you as a doctor, as she said. That's just great.
Yeah, you're truly a good person, And I mean that, David. Really, you're
Thank you so
a
much.
good man, a good man. So tell us then what your journey will be next year. We want to keep praying for you.
Mhm.
Now you're going to be at Drexel, you said,
Yes.
and then
Well,
what are your plans? Like, how long will you be there, and what type of specialty will you be going into?
mhm. So when I originally was accepted to Focus, I originally also got a deferral to Drexel Med School. So after my time with Focus, they'll be actually Focus has a training program at the end for like a week. You go and they train you on kind of how to transition from being a Focus missionary to living outside of it. So I'm excited to be able to take that because obviously my lifestyle I live now is going to be very different than the lifestyle I live as a med student in many ways. In many ways it won't change, but in many ways it will. So I'm excited to be able to probably matriculate into school in July or August. Drexel has a campus in Philadelphia, but they're also opening a new campus in Reading, which is my hometown. So it might be a great opportunity for me to be able to go there. I've done a lot of shadowing there. It's a 4-year program for medical school. I don't exactly know what field of medicine. I've really loved shadowing many surgeons in the past. It's obviously a very long road and a very challenging road, so I'll have to see if that's where the Lord calls me. But it'll be a great time to be able to discern and continue to serve. One of the things that I've been really reflecting on is that, even though I'm leaving as a Focus missionary, I will always be a missionary disciple for Christ. It's wherever I'm called to serve him, whether that be in the medical field, whether it be in med school, whether it be working with the Catholic Medical Association, leading Bible studies with other med students, or just standing up for the dignity of patients, recognizing them as who they are, going to serve on mission trips or serve at like free clinics. That ultimately my mission field is just changing. It's not going anywhere. I'm still called to be able to serve Christ and his people. And, it might look different. It's not going to be on a college campus in the same way, but it's just going to be whatever he calls me to. And I'm excited to be able to see the journey because I know the next step in the journey, but I never know where he's going to take me in life. So
That is so awesome. David, just thank you so much for being here. And yeah, you'll definitely stay in touch with us because we would love to journey along with you as you continue your work in a different mission field than you're working right now. That's just awesome.
Well, the word that comes to my mind is, and I know that not to make you blush or anything, but a saint in the making. That's what's coming into my head because I think you're really a disciple of Christ who loves God, wants to do his will, and that's what it's all about. So I would say you'd be a great guest to come back because we want to hear more about your journey.
Thank you so much.
You might be busy though. You might be busy. So
Yeah, you might be busy.
Thank you so much. Now I want to wish you a wonderful Ash Wednesday tomorrow and a wonderful Lent. And with that being said, I think Bill has something that he wants to share with us about that. About Lent.
Yeah. So exciting, folks. That I can't. First of all, I can't believe that tomorrow was Lent. Here we are getting ready for a second Lent in this pandemic. But with that being said, I want to just give people an opportunity to let them know that we do have some resources for them available during this Lenten season. We have a page up on our online store called Resources for Lent. And if you go to very simply patchworkheart.ecwid.com, you'll find that page, and everything on that page for the duration of Lent, starting tonight, is 15% off if you enter the code Lent21. So if you enter the code Lent21 on the Resources for Lent page when you check out, it is 15% off on any of the resources there. To give you an idea of what we have there, there are some booklets of the contemplative stations of the cross. We also have an audio version of that. We have a physical CD, but we also have the digital download that you can just download it. Also, my spiritual director also authored a free resource there called the Overview of the Theology, History, and Spirituality of the Stations of the Cross, and that's completely free, but a nice PDF download of that. And then lastly, Penny Warner and myself put together, we combined her love chaplet with the Contemplative Stations of the Cross, and we did an audio version of that that's available on that page as well. And again, prices are very reasonable, but we always like to be able to give people a little bit off as well. So go over to our website and or over to our online store, which again is patchworkheart.equid.com. And I'll put a link in the show notes on the podcast version of this. But go over and do that, and you'll get just a little bit off if you use Lent 21 as the code.
I can't say enough good about the contemplative Stations of the Cross for people who are listening. I bought a bunch of them last year. I have the digital download, and Bill really did a great job. So I just want to really recommend that it's a wonderful resource, and it's not expensive, and even with and now you're going to get a discount too. So so Bill, thank you so much. Can I also just give a shout out to a couple people that David knows?
Yes.
David, now this is going to be news to you because I don't think you know about this, but 4 of your friends came together to author a book. Really? Those people are Bill, myself, Maggie Riggins, and Jen Southerton are the authors of a book called Hearts Burning Within. This is a book that's for college age. We came together last summer with kids in their college age years, friends of Maggie Riggins and Jen Southerton, and we asked the questions to them. What are your burning questions of faith? And we spent the entire summer last year, once a week, interviewing these kids. And now we have a book that's going to be published. So, Bill, tell us about that before we end.
Yeah, real quickly, folks, pray for it. It is currently at the editor and getting edited by a wonderful publishing company down in Louisiana called Caris Books or Caris Publishing. And so give a shout out to them down there, Matt Bourgeois, who's doing a phenomenal job with the book, and really looking forward to publishing that and getting it out. We're targeting hopefully graduation season, so late May, early June, so that it can be given away as gifts for those who are entering college, or even in the midst of their college experience, or maybe at the tail end of it. It's certainly a good resource for people to just grow in their faith, for young people to grow in their faith, and just get some really down-to-earth answers about what the Catholic Church teaches on some great topics. But so yeah, keep that in mind. Keep it in prayer, more importantly, and know that hopefully by the summertime, at the beginning of the summer, we'll have that out for you all.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
But David, thank you so much for being here. This has been a blast, and certainly have to have you back.
Oh, please, David, thank you. We wish you the best. Please stay in touch with us, and we will be praying for you. And I just ask for all of our audience to please pray for David Talarico and for all of the Focus missionaries. And please pray for David as he's finishing out, and for all the wonderful work that he's doing. God bless you, David.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to always be here. So hopefully to be back soon.
Yes, and well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, keep beating to that Catholic heart and sowing hope into broken hearts.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sowing Hope on Patchwork Heart Radio. For more information about this podcast and our ministries, visit our websites, patchworkheart.org and andesantis.com. You can also follow and interact with us on Twitter at PWH Ministry or Andy Santis 2.